Hello, I'm BJ from Hearns Hobbies and welcome to another unboxing. And I've got a brand new Tamiya kit. And when I say brand new, it doesn't look brand new, but this is a fully brand new retooled kit. Retooled? Not retooled, brand new tooling. This is a Leopard 2 A7. It looks very similar to the A6, but it actually has very different surfaces compared to the other tank. So the whole kit's been freshly made. Now the A7 is the latest incarnation of the Leopard 2. It has quite a few upgrades, armor upgrades, cannon upgrade, which actually could have been from the previous version, but compared to the original Leopard 2s, it's been quite a evolution. Now the Leopard 2s first came about in the early 1970s and they first were put into use towards the end of 1970s, 1980s, and it's been in evolution since. And this is Germany's main battle tank. Now let's have a look at the kit. So from the top, let's have a look. Beautiful box art as we can see. This has markings for 3 different German markings. And you can see from here, it may not be obvious, but the whole front end is different. This section here, all around the turret, and the rear end is quite different. So let's see how they've come about with this brand new, fully modern kit. It's in 35th scale, which is a standard scale for armor. Molded in a green. Now Tamiya do tend to mold their kits in a particular base color. More commonly they've been in greys and whites, but armor is quite common to see them in a green, and this one's in a dark green, which makes it probably easier for most people to handle. Quite a lot of people are black priming now, starting with a dark base, or even if you started with a dark green base, this will be very easy to cover. Okay, so let's have a look at the first lot of sprues. I'll move that over here. All right, so what I've got here, we have turret, and as you can see, this turret is absolutely massive. This is the base of the turret, and 35th scales, that's about the same size of, say, the hull of a Sherman. It's roughly the same sort of size. There's the top of the hull, sides, and various parts of the glacis plate and armor. And we have the gun here, all molded in one piece. Now if you're familiar with earlier armor kits, quite often you'll get the gun which is molded in 2 pieces, and earlier kits which were molded in 1 piece, they were quite disappointing because they would be oval. But with this, they spent quite a lot of care in making that totally round. And if you're not happy with a molded turret, gun, the barrel is available as a turned aluminium option. But I think as is, I think it's pretty good. And one thing you can't see yet, I'll be zooming in, is the surface detail, which is the anti-slip texture. You might be able to see some of it there as I go through the reflections. And that's actually molded into the surfaces. And hence why it's better to have so many pieces, because sections like that, it's easier to mold it while it's flat and not angular like it would be sitting in situ. So you get the full surface detail of that anti-slip. All right, let's get in tight and have a closer look. Over here, let's get that in focus. All right, so let's see. You can see that anti-slip there now, can't you? I think my focus is still a bit off. There we go. So quite a lot on the top. So you've got over here, this will be your loader's hatch. Loader's hatch, gunner's hatch. And then this is the commander. You see with all the periscopes all around. And just see how much of that anti-slip is around. So obviously it's all around the top of the tank because that's where the crew is going to be walking. Here's a closer look at the gun. Now the thing that you'll be concerned about would be the mold line. So there's the mold line there, and that should be easy enough to sand off without removing too much detail. But again, if you don't like that, there is the optional machined barrel. Over here is the bottom of the turret. So even there you get some fan detail. You get some bolts. Get your panel detail all around. So obviously the base of the turret is going to be a bit simplified. Even a real one will be simplified. But you can see there's a decent amount of bolt detail. That'll be for the oblique armor. And then you've got the sides. Alright, so you've got the gun mount there, which will be like part of the breech. And you see you've got the hinging section so the gun can move up and down. And then the sides. There's quite a lot of things that hang off the sides of this particular tank. Again, you've got some more applique armor, sort of glacis plate areas. See how they're textured as well, and also here. Okay, so that's our first lot of sprue. Let's go on to the next one. Over here we've got sections of the hull, and then look at how massive this top part of the hull is. I mean, the turret was big enough. The turret was about here. So that gives you an indication of how big main battle tanks are. The Abrams would be a similar size. And then the Russian type tanks were a smaller type of unit, lower silhouette. So slightly different idea to the Western main battle tank. Over here we've got, I'm not too sure what these sections are. We've got armor here, which would be like the skirts. You can see how they're all sectioned off, replaceable skirts. That's the side of the hull, so they'll be across this section here. And these could be probably, what do you call it? What do you call that section that goes across here, where the tracks are? It escapes me at the moment. But multiple pieces. I don't mind multiple pieces. It can be complicated with some kits if they don't fit very well. But you can be assured that with Tamiya kits, the fit is impeccable. So to me, the more bits there are, the more detail. So let's get a bit closer and I'll show you there's some more anti-slip detail here. So there's little pads. Even on top of these sections here. So you're going to have these big fans for the engine cooling, little anti-slip panels. Little hatch points. Like so. Actually, let's have a closer look at some of these side skirt details. You can see the bolt details here and there. Nice panel lines. And when I say nice panel lines, some of the newer kits try to have very fine panel lines, like scale panel lines, I guess you call it. But I think it really helps if the panel lines are slightly oversized, because at the end of the day, yes, it's a scale model, but to be able to do all of your panel line washes and details properly, I mean, paint does cover this and it will fill in the panel lines a little bit. So a slightly thicker one will help you achieve that finish. If they're finer, yes, it'll look more realistic, but you have to be much more careful not to hide all that with too much paint. I guess that's probably why part of the philosophy of Tamiya, they always think about how much detail they're going to add and how much they're going to emphasize or overscale to make it enjoyable. Okay, so there we go. So that's the upper hull, and now we're going to go into the lower hull. So there's the lower hull and a bit of the front end. Okay, so we've got the base of the hull here. we've got the sides of the lower hull. Again, you can see this is multi-piece. On some of the earlier kits, you would see these would be molded in one piece. And I think that was a catch cry, say, of the 90s and the 2000s, where having a single piece mold, which is quite complicated, I think that's like showcasing how good the mold cutting is. But as I said earlier, it is actually better to have these all separate, because with the molding process, you generally, I can see here, this will be a two-piece mold. There's no slide molding in this one, so it's just a top and a bottom. And where it faces perpendicular to that movement is where you're going to get the sharpest detail. Okay, so that means that the detail is going to be reduced down here. But with careful planning, and particularly with this multi-piece hull design, you're going to have equal amounts of sharp detail across this section as you would with this section without using a slide mold. So hence why you find all these grills, they're always facing this way so that the mold can sit in there nice and snug. We've got some more anti-slip across here. So this would be an applique armor which is on top of the sort of the driver's area. You've got a little opening there for the periscope. Large section here, that would be the applique armor for the base here, because this is the additional applique armor on the bottom of the tank to protect against mines. So that would sit over here. You see there's the escape hatch, and you see there's an extension of the escape hatch right there. Let's get in tight and have a closer look. All right, here we go. We've got the base of the hull. There's the escape hatch, and you see there's some locators at these points. So they're quite chunky locators, and that's to help you locate this section, which is the applique armor. And you see how it's got an additional section there to protect that part of the escape hatch, and that will just sit on top of the bottom of the hull. Okay, so there's the insides of the sides of the hull. You're not going to see any of that, so mainly it's going to be this side. And that's all the suspension, and where all the trailing arms are going to be going into. So there are some ejector molding pins, as you can see. Generally you see those as the shiny parts. And I think they'll be quite easy to deal with because they're not too close to any sharp detail. See how they're sort of spaced away? So just with the edge of a blade or something flat, you can just quite easily fill those. Or those all along there. And if you're going to be doing this in a mud scene, you'll probably cover most of those up with some mud and weathering anyway. Okay, so from there, let's have a closer look at the grille on the back end. Quite a substantial piece. So that's basically the butt of the tank. There's that detail for the anti-slip. So it's quite pronounced. You can actually feel it there. It actually feels like there was a really light paste put over there. That helps from having to do that yourself with some sort of texture paint. It's also over these hatches. And then you've got some more texture there. All right, very nice. All right, so there's the base of the hull. Now we're going to get into some smaller bits, and as it gets smaller, it's going to be hard to recognize these parts. Now this looks like a lot of the paraphernalia that's sitting around on the turret. So we're going to have the air conditioning systems. So these sections, a couple of boxes at the back of the turret. So air conditioning systems, different hatches. Look at some spare track. Well, these are actually the, what do you call them again? I am lost for words. These are normally placed onto the tracks to give extra traction. So say going through snow or such. We've got some hatches here. And interesting enough, these parts here are actually not part of the tank. These are templates for the PhotoWch. So basically what you're going to do is the PhotoWch, this is for the baskets. So there's quite a few large PhotoWch baskets, and this really enhances the tank or this particular kit because you get some voids. So you can fill those in with some stowage if you like, and you'll be able to see them. So the PhotoWch sits on top of this, and then it's sandwiched with this particular section here. So this will slide over here, and it'll bend it into this shape. And I'll show you how that's done in the manual when we get to that. There's another one there. So very clever. It's not the first time these sort of templates have been done, but I think it's one of the first times I've seen it in a Tamiya kit. So we've got little pieces here. This would be the top part of the glacis plate, where you have the gun poking out this way. So that's all fully textured. Whoops, just lost stuff in there. There we go. So a lot of fine details, and a lot of this does look like mostly on the turret, but there's probably some of these parts that end up around the hull as well. Here's the back section. And here you see how Tamiya do try to have all their ejection pins on the back of things if they can, because these sections here will not be visible at all. Alright, so there we go. Next part is suspension and wheels. And this is where we get two identical sprues. And very clever. I mean, the more the manufacturer does this, the cheaper their tooling is, and the lower they can make the retail price of the particular kit, which is good for us too. So manufacturer needs to be able to make it viable to make the kit, and particularly tooling something brand new. I mean, that takes a lot of investment. So let's have a look. We got wheels and sway bars. And I'll put this one aside and we'll have a closer look at this. Now the wheels themselves, the way they're molded, isn't much different to a traditional tank, I guess. I don't know if you can really improve that much. So you've got this standard two-piece. We've got bolt detail inside. You've got the drive sprocket. Then on this side, you've got the other end, which would be here. Also with some bolt detail. We've got a radiator type fan mesh. And then we've got some pioneering tools. You've got a spade here, some hooks. The parts of the suspension, parts of probably the shock absorbing. Got some wheel hubs all the way along there. Even the sprocket has some really nice cast detail in it. Some more little bits and pieces. Got your swing arms. Okay, so there are all the suspension arms there. Now, if we have a careful look at these suspension arms, you'll see here, this is something that Tamiya has been doing lately with the axles. They're not actually straight cylindrical, they're actually coned. And that allows the wheel, when it's placed on, to be fitting absolutely in the right angle or true to where it's meant to be. In the past, sometimes you have these shafts and they'll be too loose and you end up with wobbly wheels, so they won't match each other. And this is something I've seen on their aircraft kits as well. So that's very clever. Then on this side, you see that that's not round, that's actually semicircular, so it's actually keyed into the hull. And I'll explain that a bit later, because with the suspension, it'll make sure that the suspension is totally flat and straight, because this is designed to be built as sitting on a totally flat surface. If you wanted to be really adventurous and make all the suspension in different angles, well, you need to modify it a little bit, which means, you see how that's mainly round, just means you'll need to open up the section in the hull so you can rotate it to change the angles. But if you do that, you're going to have to change the track, and I'll show you that in a moment. But there we go, so all the little bits and pieces there. All right, so that's two sprues which are identical. And then we end up with this one here. What do we got here? This one has our crew figures. a little bit of soft stowage, which is quite organic. That's right there with some straps. And we have some of the tow cables, the machine gun, some more, I think I've got the word now, it was the grousers. These are the parts that go onto the tank tracks for additional traction. Other bits and pieces which are probably more stowage. So let's have a closer look. And particularly in the figures have come a really long way. So they're using 3D scanning technology to enhance the sculpting of the figures. And the figures in the past used to be one piece in the torso, but they're actually two piece now. You've got a back and a front. And again, as I explained before, that would help with getting some nice detail. And there's the heads. So we've got two heads, and you'll notice that you have options. So there's helmet option, and there's a beret option. And that's the same with the commander and the loader gunner. So there's the top of the helmet right there. The sculpting of the faces is phenomenal. They're two very distinct faces. And that just adds to the natural and realistic appearance of the kit after it's finished. So arms are separate. And same over here. Alright, so here's that organic piece of stowage I was talking about. That looks really good. Because all the other parts we've seen so far have been very angular and flat. And this one's looking a bit more organic. So you've got the organic shape of the cable, the tow cables. Again here as well. Then that looks like a light or even a siren. Oop, there we go again. Some more parts. This is another storage basket. There's actually a PhotoWch that goes around that. That's a frame for the PhotoWch after you bend it. There's a machine gun. That'll be a pick. That looks like a bow saw. The grousers, do I get that right? Some axes, little one, big one, depending on the size of the tree you encounter, I guess. So there we go. So that's all those sort of details there. All right, there's some polycaps. Polycaps are probably going to be used for the either the idler wheel or the sprocket. Just makes it easy to put them on, slide them on, and then align your track around it because you can rotate it quite freely without gluing it on. You can go back there. Then we have, here's our big sprue of tracks. So as I said earlier, the reason why you've got keyed trailing arms is because they've got this multi-piece track. Now, Tamiya tanks quite often will have rubber tracks, and that's for ease of fitting because you can get them to curve around. But the issue with rubber tracks is you can't get the sharp detail in them. Now, the ultimate track detail is when they're individual, but not a lot of people have time to do individual or have the patience to do them. So even this, which we call section track, still has a lot of bits. You see that we've got long sections which are molded. So you've got a shorter section here, longer section. So this will be for the top of the track, the lower section of the track, and then there'll be individual pieces here to give you that realistic curve that goes around the sprocket and also the idler wheel. And these individual parts here are the individual, like these sections here. These are the rubber traction blocks, I guess. So these single ones here, actually two piece. And that's probably because they're sandwiched with these, what do you call those? The hinge pins. So you've got hinge pins here. You've got the actual guide of the track, and then you have the rubber traction part of the track. So let's have a closer look. So as you can see, here's the sections which are already molded in one line. And then you have your individual sections here. So these have got the guides. Then over here, you've got the traction rubber blocks. And here you have the hinge pins. Hinge pins or suspension pins. So this is like I guess a compromise of having the ultimate detail of an individual track section to the simplicity of a rubber track section, which is going to have less detail. So we've got all this, which is going to be perfectly flat, which makes it easy to build because all you have to do is concentrate on this section here. And I think it's a good compromise. You've got good detail, and most tanks are built on a totally flat looking stance anyway. And if you do want to get into a really intricate individual track setup, just say you want the track to be displayed on diorama on very rough terrain, then it'll be up to you to do the modifications and get yourself an individual track set, which will be from a third-party supplier. Okay, so there's a track. So 2 identical sprues there. We have our clear parts, which are going to be pretty difficult to see, I think, but we'll try and capture the reflections. Here we go. If I angle it like that, you'll see there's actually quite a lot of glass. And tanks really do have quite a lot of glass because there's periscopes and such. And there wasn't so much in earlier kits because this is quite a bit of a challenge. There we go, so you can see periscopes. And when you paint this, you're leaving the periscope sections clear. And you'll have areas which are around the commander section and also for the driver as well. Okay, so they're clear parts. And then we have PhotoWch. So here's the PhotoWch I was talking about earlier. So sections like this, they are put into the templates and actually pressed to have them curved because it's going to be like this sort of U-shaped section. Also for these. And then these covers for the engine deck. And then you have this little, I guess it's like a elastic mesh that's put on top of the turret as well. Nice touch. It's quite a sizable bit of PhotoWch that's included. What do we have there? There's nothing on the back. And then we have this little bag here, which has, that's your masking. So that's going to be put onto each one of your clear bits. Because quite often you'll be building up your tank, you'll build most of it before you paint it. So put all this on all your clear parts, glue them in, and then you spray it, and then you can peel these off and have all the clear parts. I'm not going to open this up, so we're going to try and see this decals through the protective paper. But you have registration numbers there, there's 3 options. You have the German crosses, and then various warnings and also division markings there. All right, let's get into the documentation. Pretty standard tech tips that you get into in all modern Tamiya kits now. Really handy guide, particularly for beginners, on how to tackle certain challenges of a kit. Then we have a guide on the tank. So we have Japanese on this side. You've got some specs. I've got a painting chart and marking chart. Okay, so you've got A, B or C. They're your 3 options for different divisions. And that's a 3-color camo scheme. Then you have the patchy camo scheme of the crew. We have a French description here. And then it was English. Okay, so we've got English and German on this side. So that's really handy. And then we have the manual. So the manual is quite big. All right, so let's open it up. And we have, this is pretty standard, the recommended tools, adhesives. Here is our paint chart. And then here it's mentioning the optional aluminium barrel. So before you start, they let you know, so you can actually get that before you start building. Here we have a description of the 3 different divisions. And we start masking first. So you mask up all your clear bits because they're going to be ending up in your hull and your turret. And we start building the lower hull. So multi-piece, you've got 2 sides with suspension, the base, and you have, this would be the firewall or the engine compartment backing, but that's mainly there for support to make sure it all holds together straight. Got your applique armor on the bottom. That's the mine protection applique armor. Got some hooks going in the front. Some suspension components. That'll be the idler adjustment, I think. And then we have the suspension, so the shocks, your top idler wheels, all your swing arms going into place, and we start building the wheels. So 2-piece, you use sprocket, idler, main road wheels. They all get put into place, and you see this sort of shows you where the cone action is. So when you put them on, these are going to be totally straight. Here we start building the track. So you can see how the track is multi-piece. Got your flat sections. Actually, I didn't realize. So your larger flat sections are actually 2-piece as well. So they have a hinge pin which is attached. And you have all your individual ones here as well. So you start building individual ones and making short sections. So 9 links and 10 links. And then you make your shorter length and your longer length. And this is basically how they go together. So your longer length goes across the top. Your individual ones can bend. And again, you attach it to the bottom so that when you put it onto the wheels, you attach that onto the last link. You do that for the other side as well. So you end up with a totally flat track system. Okay, so there's the base of the, or the back of the hull getting put on. You've got hooks and divisional markings. Oh, here we go. There's those flat sections, which are the, what do you call them? Spats? No, not spats. Something like that. This is the top of the hull. You have the sides of the hull. You see the top of the hull is the right way up now. And then we start working on the front end. So we have this driver's hatch with the additional armor. So applique armor across the front. We have the side skirts. Side skirts onto the top of the hull. And then you have the mating of the top of the hull onto the base of the hull. And then some of the Pioneer equipment is getting fit on the back. More Pioneer equipment. So you got your shovel, your bow saw, what are they? Wire snips, maybe? They go on the back. You got more front armor here. Lights. And that looks like a horn. Frontal armor put in place with some stowage bins. You've got your mud flaps. The mirrors. So the driver's mirrors were actually stowed. And then we go into the back section. So PhotoWch being used. You've got your radiator grills going on, and then the PhotoWch. So PhotoWch, of course, you put on with super glue or CA glue. And they're just telling you here to be careful of the direction of the PhotoWch, because the PhotoWch actually has this weaved pattern in the mesh. So make sure you show that upside, otherwise if you put it upside down it will be totally flat and won't have the same amount of detail. Okay, here we have the spare track links. They're hanging off the back end with your tow hooks and cable. And then we start getting into the turret. So top of the turret, we've got these periscopes going in. You've got the figure supports here because they're half figures. And so the half figure will be sitting on these. Top of the hull now. We've got the covers for the sensors and the sighting equipment. Lower part of the hull, no, lower part of the turret I should say. We've got the gun hinge system. Sides of the turret, there's a back section. And then the top getting mated on. And then we start working on the mantlet of the gun itself. And this is the point where you use the aluminium one if you have that. You have your front applique armor, and then the gun goes into place. What have we got here? So we've got our air conditioning systems. So the climate control and the NBC protection system, which is the nuclear, biological, chemical filtering system. And then there's a storage box here. And there are those two major boxes which go on the back of the turret, which really extend the size of the turret. You can see how big this climate control system is. And then spare tracks are just placed on the back of that. Over here we've got an antenna case. That's on top of the spare tracks. And then these are the templates which are used for shaping the PhotoWch baskets. So you can see how flat PhotoWch is placed on top. And then as you apply the top of the template across the top, it bends it into shape perfectly. Over here we've got fire extinguishers, and you can see here where the curved PhotoWch is getting glued and attached to the supports. Fire extinguishers on that side. There's that really soft bit of stowage we saw before. So what do they call that? The waterproof sheet. So it's a bit of tarp. Again, we have a different template for shaping another basket, and you see it going into place here. And you see that huge basket is on this side of the back of the turret. And look at the size of that turret, absolutely massive. So remembering that this section here is just air conditioning system and stowage. You'll have all of this back section here on a lot of Western main battle tanks. This is actually where all the ammunition is held. And they'll have blow-off type sections, so if it gets hit, it actually blows out rather than into the crew, because the crew is very important and they can always move on to another tank that gets replaced. There's that soft, I guess it's like that mesh. Well, that's the size mesh that goes over the top there. That's PhotoWch as well, so it's super glued on. Got the edges of the cupolas, hatches glued in. It's got the option of having them open or closed, and obviously if you have your crew in place, you'll have them open. If you're not so good with figures, you can always have them closed. And then here we have another section of template. So bend a curve into that PhotoWch. That's all glued together. You've got your smoke discharges. All these little bits and pieces are attached to the side of the turret. You've got your swinging out applique armor there. On the left side as well, you've got some hooks and bars. What's this thing up? Oh no, it looks like some sort of display. It's probably a LED display. And then we have the turret, which locks on with a bayonet action. That's pretty standard. So you can actually rotate the turret. We've got antennas going into place, a machine gun, and then work on the crew. Option of the helmet or the beret style. That's with both figures. Drop those in, glue them onto the bases. And that's it. So there we go. That is my open box review of actually it's this way around, the brand new Tamiya 35th scale Leopard 2 A7V, the latest version of the Leopard 2. So I hope you enjoyed that. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And if you'd like to see more content like this, think about subscribing. So thank you for joining me.